Well, hello. We are at the end of a long and fruitful conference. I hope you've all enjoyed hearing, whether you're out there in the Zoom world or whether you're here. You've been with us in Warsaw, in the hall as well. I'm very pleased to have with me well-known faces in this field. Murray Glover and also Brad Rodu. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your resilience. Your resilience at sticking it to the bitter end.
Wouldn't miss it.
So let me start with Murray. I mean, what's important for you at this kind of conference? What makes you hopefully look forward to it?
Oh, it's really important, especially being blacklisted, being excluded from many other conferences, to have a conference where I can come together with other people who are also experiencing that kind of anti-science behavior and to be heard, to be able to let people know about the research that I'm doing, to hear other people's research. And what I found during the pandemic was that, because as researchers, you're thinking up new research ideas all the time, you're identifying sort of priorities for research. That'd be a cool study. And there was a period there where I just had a blank. It was like a blank. Mm-hmm. And I realized, well, I'm not getting any of that interaction. Going to conferences, you're listening to people, and that's where you get ideas from. That's where you hear even stuff before it's published. People are presenting research and saying, oh, but we still don't know this. And then you go, well, we can find out that. Yeah. So it's an important source of information about what are the gaps, what further research is needed. You hear people present some research and you go, that's not right. And so, again, that's another source of ideas. Don't you think, Brad?
Well, this is a growing field. And meetings like this, you see that it truly is growing. And what I appreciate is the diversity of the participants. Mm-hmm. We have professionals who have been in tobacco field for years, but we also have consumers. That's super important to have contact with the people these products are going to help. And then also there's company participation. And I think that's vital because we need to know what these products, how they're going to develop, and the company's commitment to safer tobacco for smokers.
And it's what is so ridiculous about the Article 5.3 and all of that stuff that actually puts barriers between the industry and the consumers and the academics and the clinicians and the scientists who want to write about the products. There has to be that interaction. Everyone needs to be in the room. I mean, I always think in this respect about things like the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Everyone's in the room. The environmental groups, big oil, big gas, big everything. They are all talk. What comes out of that, of course, is very political, but nevertheless, everyone's kind of round the table. What about takeaways? So this has been like, we haven't done this since 2019.
Well, again, listening to the consumers and their concern that they're not being listened to, that much of the research that is being done is serving an anti-vaping agenda, an anti-tobacco agenda, and consumers are being targeted and being misrepresented. Their experience of using the products is being misrepresented by much of the research as well. So hearing that, I think that one of the takeaways from me is that somehow, and maybe it is researchers that need to help, they need to be able to voice and or put together what are their research priorities, what would they like to see research on. And, I think we both talked with consumers about this topic, and I would encourage them, we need to work with them more, and I think I'd like to see more participatory action research where consumers are setting the agenda, they're involved in learning how to do research and driving research themselves.
Excellent.
Well,
What about you?
I always take home much more than I bring to meetings like this. And it's really amounts to enthusiasm. Enthusiasm to keep this work up and to keep pushing ahead, because there is no question that in the long history of the world, what's right, what's safer, developments happen, and there's no question that the cigarette is on a short history and safer tobacco products will reign. There's no doubt about that.
That's great. So picking up on that hopeful prognosis of yours, where do you think we could be? I mean, you know, it's a short history that we're doing, but where do you think, you know, reasons to be hopeful? Where would you, if we're sitting here hopefully in 2023, what do you hope, where do you think we'll be? Where do you hope we're going to be in a year's time?
So again, one of the, I think, takeaways is that there was a little bit more, I thought, content talking about the benefits of nicotine. So a little bit more recognition that there are ways in which nicotine does help people, and maybe medicinal ways, or, you know, for various disorders, like we already knew about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But consumers, and listening to consumers, we're finding out that there may be other conditions that are helped by nicotine, and there was a session on the benefits of nicotine. And okay, it might not always work for each person, but it may work for a lot of people. So I hope that we do see more research being done on the potential benefits of nicotine and how it can be used to help people who have particular mental health conditions or even inflammatory conditions. So that was good. I think that's a kind of there's a potential future there in terms of, because let's face it, at the moment, the many in World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and Tobacco Control, they're aiming for elimination of the plant altogether. You know, no use of tobacco or nicotine in any way.
Right. I mean, Brad, do you think that, just thinking about medicinal cannabis and the way that maybe it's helped bring cannabis per se sort of from the margins and kind of more into the do you think there's nicotine can come in from the cold, so to speak, through biochemical, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, even not even necessarily developments in the tobacco industry? I mean, is there a moment, you know, a tipping point for nicotine?
I don't think there's any question, Harry. With a drug that's not that dissimilar from another widely used drug called caffeine,
Right.
I think that nicotine can be rehabilitated. In fact, I think the biggest challenge is the correction of the misinformation. And from my discussions with colleagues all over the world here, it's a dominant phenomenon. Yeah. Everybody misunderstands nicotine. I think that's something we all can work on.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think there's hope, because our Food and Drug Administration, which is no friend of tobacco, has already approved several products as appropriate to be sold on the American market, smoke-free products that are vastly safer. So we now have a regulatory structure in these states in which that can be done. And I think that we have to continue that development.
Right. Okay. I think I've probably held you here for long enough. Is there any concluding statements you want to make?
In terms of your reference to cannabis and what we see happening in that field, I mean, one of the key turning points was the technology that allowed CBD and THC to be separated, so that you could extract CBD from cannabis and the THC.
Yeah.
So you have now a lot of people in the general public kind of understand that, and we already can do that with nicotine. Nicotine can be separated from tobacco. You know, you don't have to smoke it to get the nicotine anymore. This has been the case for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that what has happened around cannabis, that you can use CBD without THC, the public understand. And certainly in New Zealand, in the research that I do, we had a referendum on cannabis, and there's this kind of, everyone's like, but why would you do, why, they said they wanted the country to be smoke-free, but they're trying to legalise the recreational smoking of cannabis, and it's creating a confusion, and it's a contradiction in the public's mind. And so I think that there will be some flow over from what's happened with cannabis. The public will probably lead this because they don't have the agenda that politicians have. They don't have the agenda that academics have. And they're the ones that understand that, what's the issue here, you know? So
absolutely.
I think that's a very good point, and we will see a change.
That just leads me, finally, Brad, to just ask you one thing, and it kind of, you picked up on it, on the kind of misinformation and the ignorance about nicotine. We've talked quite a lot about, you know, journals not accepting papers and academics not being allowed to this and this. But you've kind of held journal editors' feet to the fire, haven't you, on more than one occasion. So it's the opposite of decent science not getting into the public domain. It's rubbish science, junk science. And a lot of that is based on, I'm assuming, confirmation bias, not a lot to do with the sun. What on earth is going on out there? Just in summary, what do you think?
Well, I think the solution to this, as in many fields in medicine and science, is full data disclosure and access and post-publication review. It's that simple.
Right.
If we have that, we'll fix all of the issues.
And is there resistance to that?
Or absolutely there is. Absolutely there is. And some data sets are confidential or have special properties, but most data sets don't. And in fact, some fields, when you submit a paper or a study, you submit the code so that it can be reviewed and reproduced almost immediately. And that's what this field needs very, very seriously.
Well, that's something I'm sure you'll be keeping your eye on in the coming months.
And I would add that, you know, the scientists and academics, we do need everybody to be declaring their conflicts of interest. And we need that recognition. As scientists know, we're always constantly trying to reduce bias in our analysis and our results and our research. And there's so much bias now that is not being disclosed. It's not just about who you're funded by. It's also the position you're coming from, your beliefs. And I think that we need to have much fuller disclosure of sources of bias. And be requiring, like that strengths and limitations section that people have to write. It's almost like a, you know, a dot
template.
point. Template, put this, put that. But, you know, there are some sectors where, you know, being reflective and being more open about your biases is kind of expected, and that needs to be happening in public health. We need more critical public health being done.
Right, great. Well, that's tremendous. Thank you very much for some very lucid analysis at this very late time in the day. Sitting next to the windows with the sun coming.
Yeah, it's been a great conference. Thank you.
Okay, people, it's time for us to kind of sign off, but just a couple of comments to make. During the course of this conference, we've launched our the right to health and the right to tobacco harm reduction. The next thing on our agenda will be the 2022 Global State of Tobacco Harm Reduction Report, which is coming out in November, which is actually going to track the history of tobacco harm reduction, how we got here, where we're at, and the real tricky one, where we think it's going to go. But that's called the right side of history, because I think we would all agree that everyone in this community is definitely on the right side of history. I'm just reminded about a scene in Jurassic Park. Bear with me on this one. Who the dinosaurs are in the international tobacco control community is probably a conversation for another day. But at one point, the dinosaur scientists say to Jeff Goldblum, they say, "But there's no way these dinosaurs can reproduce because they're all females. You know, what can possibly go wrong?" And Jeff Goldblum puts his head to one side and he says, "No," he says, "life will find a way." And of course, life did find a way in the end. If you watched all the sequels, which I have, then you'll know life did find a way. And I think we will find a way. We are finding a way. We've come from nowhere around 2006, a handful of vapors, maybe the odd cigarette, to now 100 million people using safer nicotine products and a vast array of products to choose from. So we are definitely here to stay, and I hope you are going to join us again next year. Hopefully more of you will be able to make it, but we'll be online again, because we are definitely here for good. Thank you very much.